Hey, 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 welcome to the show where I answer your questions. This is your Bible Questions Answered. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas Hamp. I'll get my words right, don't worry. Uh, so I'm going to take your Bible questions. I'm excited to do it. I do it almost every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. So if you're new to this show, you're like, what does he do here? How do I get in? You can get the Way Congregation app at your stores of where they do apps and stuff, right? Apple and Google. You go there, or you can join us live right here on the show. If you're on your computer or on your phone, you can put your question in the live chat. But I do take the questions that are in the app first. So if you want to get the Way Congregation app, check that out and you put your question in there and then I will get to it. All right. I want to give a big shout out to my patrons. Thank you, guys. It's huge. Thank you so much. I'm trying to get to 100 patrons. So, pray for that. If you want to be part of that, it'd be awesome. You can give as little as $2 a month. You can give up to, well, there's no limit, but it's up to you. So thank you. It means so much when people do that. It's huge. All right, moving on. Let's get to your questions because we've got some great questions. Now, I discovered that I missed a bunch of questions last week. So here we go. This is from Jonathan. He says, is the offering mentioned in Leviticus 23:14 referring to weeks or first fruits? Okay, let's take a look at Leviticus 23:14. And so you guys can see it. There we go. All right, Leviticus 23:14. So here we go. Let's start back. I'm going to make this a little bigger. You guys can see it. All right, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, when you come into the land, which I give you, reap its harvest, you shall bring a sheaf of first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted on your behalf. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And you shall offer on that day, when you wave the sheaf, a male lamb of the first year without blemish as a burnt offering to the Lord. Its grain offering shall be 2/10 of an ephah of flour, etc. You shall neither eat all this stuff until you have brought in offering to the Lord. Okay, I am quite convinced that it's talking about the feast of first fruits, and then we go to Pentecost or Shavuot, which comes later. So Shavuot, Pentecost starts in verse 15. All right, cool. This is from Chad. He says, if the day went from evening to evening when the times recorded in the New Testament would make sense, where and how did the evening to evening thing get started? From sunrise to sunrise makes much more sense when you read the scriptures. Even my footnotes say 6 a.m. All right. So, yeah, there are some people that come into Hebrew roots, Torah movement, Messianic, and they say, oh, the Jews got it all wrong. Look, the Jews certainly, most of them, in my opinion, got Jesus wrong. Okay, I think say they got Jesus wrong, but there are some things that they care very much about. They care about Messiah too, but there's some things they really do care about, and that is, when does the Sabbath begin? They've been studying this for a very long time, and so I don't just go along with whatever they say, but I think that they have a lot to say in this regard. So they have long understood this to be talking about the from sun up to, or well, not sun up, but they start talking about from evening till evening. Now, where do they get this idea? Well, it just so happens that in Genesis chapter 1, God sort of says something about this. So let's take a look at Genesis chapter 1. All right, and so God divided the evening. All right, let me see. You guys can see it. All right, and God saw the light that it was good, and he divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were one day. All right, so now it says the first day in English, but that is not the best translation right here. All right, so I want you to see this. It says, Vayihi erev, vayihi voker, yom echad. All right, so why does he say one day instead of first day here? According to St. Basil, he says it was because he wanted to establish what a day was. And I happen to agree with him. All right, what is one day? And there was evening and there was morning. That's what counts as a day. So that's the most definitive passage we have on what constitutes a day. And there was evening and there was morning, right? That is the definition of a day. And then we see that pattern repeated throughout Scripture. Now, I have something that I also want to share. This is regarding something known as Motzei Shabbat. All right, so I have this here in my teaching. If you want to go check this out, when I was teaching through the book of Acts, feel free to do so. All right, so Paul taught on something called Motzei Shabbat. All right, now on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until about midnight. And I think you guys probably can't see that. All right, let me try that again. All right, until about midnight. So the big question in a lot of debates on when, what day did Paul go and speak to the disciples? When did they come together to break bread? Was it Sunday, or was it in fact Saturday? And I'm going to argue that it was Saturday evening, because if you go to Israel today, they have something called Motzei Shabbat. This is a tradition that has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. All right. So let's take a look here. So in the halakhic source for making Havdalah, what is a Havdalah? That is where it's a tradition. It's a beautiful tradition. I mean, lehavdil means to divide. All right. We see that first in the book of Genesis, where God is dividing the light from the darkness. He's dividing the waters above from the waters below, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So he does a lot of dividing there. So you're dividing the holy, this holy day called Sabbath, from the profane. The first, profane doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's common. Right. And that's when the first day begins. All right. So this is called the Havdalah service, and it is generally celebrated around between 6 and 8 o'clock in the evening, depending on exactly where in the year it falls. So this has been going on for a very long time. So we can see here in the Babylonian tractate, Bracha, folio 33, it has been stated, according to Rabbi Hia ben Abba, said in the name of Rabbi Yohanan, the men of the great synagogue, instituted for Israel blessings and prayers, sanctifications, and Havdalahs. After Havdalah, in many communities, people sang religious songs connected to Motzei Shabbat and the prophet Elijah. So Motzei means the coming out of, or the going out of the Sabbath. And that was celebrated Saturday evening. All right, that's what we call Saturday evening. Somewhere between 6 and 8 in the evening is when that is celebrated. There's also a custom of eating a festive meal after the Sabbath, known as Malave Malka, escorting the queen. This meal was instituted to make it easier to bid farewell to the Sabbath queen by celebrating Motzei Shabbat with food and song. This has been going on at least since the 4th or 5th century BC. All right, this has been happening a very, very, very long time. So when Paul was celebrating, or he was talking with people, they came together to break bread. When did they do that? Well, we just read that this was a long-standing tradition, that they would break bread Saturday evening, and then he started talking somewhere between 7 and 9 o'clock. Who knows exactly? But he starts talking somewhere at that time, and then he goes until midnight, and then the young man falls out of the window. So it wasn't that he was starting Sunday morning, he got his sermon going, and he was preaching all day for 12, 13 hours, 14 hours, and then this young man falls out the window. No, Eutychus, right? Poor kid. But it was because it was Motzei Shabbat. That was the first day of the week. It's the first day of the week started Saturday evening. And this is a very, very long-standing tradition. Okay, so there are more evidences that we have the first, or the day starting in the evening. Remember that the Pharisees wanted to get Jesus off the cross before sundown, because then Passover would start, right? And of course, I know there's debate about that, but still, they wanted, debate as to when exactly Passover starts and all that. But regardless, they wanted to get him down before sundown, because then something happened. That's when the clock changed. That's when the clock struck midnight, as it were. Okay. So instead of, doing it on the Roman style, where it's just midnight, which is somewhat arbitrary. Why should midnight be the beginning of a new day? Who knows? This was, they just didn't do it that way. So, so anyway, I think that's enough to say that the tradition, the not even tradition, that's the wrong word. The reality of a day starting in the evening and then ending in the following evening as from the beginning. All right. Those who disagree, well, I disagree with them. Okay. All right. Let's move on. We got more questions here. Thank you, Chad. This is from Sean. Matthew 8:28 talks of two men, Mark and Luke, only one man. Any insights on this? Okay, let's go to Matthew 8:28. Matthew 8:28. All right, and let me share my screen. Oops, hold on. I'm still sharing, not the Bible, but the other thing. There we go. All right. So when he'd come to the other side, to the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two demon-possessed men coming out of the tomb, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. All right. So, if one of them says one and only one, then we have a problem. But if it says that there was a man, by the way, versus one man, right? So that's the distinction. Um, where there's a one man, there could be two men. Where there are two men, you could only talk about one man. But if you start saying that there was one and only one, then that's when we have trouble with these numbers. So Mark just seems to focus on the one that Jesus really was dealing with. Okay, what happened to the other one? We don't know. Right? Maybe he got saved too. Maybe he hightailed it out of there before Jesus could talk to him. I don't know. I just totally guessing. Okay, it doesn't tell us, but it's not a problem in my opinion because it's not limiting it to one and only one. Okay, thank you for that. Let's go to Iris. Revelation 21:1 says that there is a new heavens and new earth, and there is no sea. Revelation 20:13 says the sea gave up its dead. Can you explain why there is no sea during the millennium, and why then there is a sea after the millennium? All right. Right. So 2013, of course, is, well, let's see. Let me think about this for a second. All right. So 2013. So the way I look at Revelation is that it is written thematically versus chronologically. All right. So the themes that we have. What is the theme in Revelation 20? Well, the ruling and reigning, those who were dead were going to rule and reign. And what happens during that time? Satan is put away. Right. That is very important. What is the theme in Revelation 21? The New Jerusalem. Right. So it's not that chapter 20 comes before chapter 21. It's just that they're dealing with two different themes that are very much overlapping, right? So chapter 21 is all about the city, and chapter 20 is all about those who are ruling and Satan being put away, and of course, him getting out. And then you have at the end of that, the judgment that's going to take place, right? And so let's take a look, Iris. I love the question. I want to take a look here at Revelation 22, verse 14. And I hope this will maybe put things into perspective for you. So let's take a look at that. All right, let's go back here. So we got this river of life, pure river of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God. And notice what you have. On the middle of its street and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. So you got trees on each side of this river. And there are months that are happening since there's still time, right? Time has not gone away. And what are the trees for? The leaves of the trees for? For the healing of the nations. Well, you only need healing if people are sick. So what's happening in Revelation 22 is now a description. The theme here is about the healing that's taking place, but it's taking place during the millennium. How do I know that? Well, because it says, blessed are those who do his commandments or wash their robes, depending on how you read that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. See that? So there's this transformation process that's happening during the 1,000 years. And then notice who cannot go into the city, but outside are dogs and sorcerers and sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and practices a lie. So you have some unsavory people outside the New Jerusalem, but the people that can go in are those who keep his commandments and or wash their robes, depending on which manuscript you're looking at. and then they get to take of the tree of life. Okay, so 3 different themes that are happening. The theme in Revelation 20 is about the ruling and reigning, Satan put away. Chapter 21, you got this beautiful city and what it looks like and how awesome it is, and only the righteous can go in it. And then chapter 22 is about the restoration of partly the planet, but mostly it's the restoration of people. And we see that this river and the leaves are also in the book of Ezekiel. Now, why would they be in Ezekiel if that's only talking about the millennium? But of course, it is talking about the millennium, but so is chapter 22. However, we've been conditioned for centuries now that 21 and 22 are talking about the time after the millennium. And I totally disagree with that because I don't think it reads well. And frankly, people that read it that way are ignoring the many other passages that talk about the same exact things. That's why I had to give up the way I used to read it, because I'm like, it just doesn't fit that way. Okay. This is Sean. Could you please explain Romans 9:27 through 33? And can you explain Romans 10:4? Sure. Yeah, these are nice, easy questions. I'm just joking. All right. Romans 9:27. These are great because these are difficult. All right. So let's back up just a little bit to verse 24. Even of us whom he called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. As he says also in Hosea, I will call them my people who were not my people. I'm going to stop right there. So who were his people that Hosea is talking about? If you want to check it out, Hosea 2:23. Hosea, or God, is talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. He's talking about the 10 tribes who were his people, but then weren't his people anymore because they continued to go after all these false gods and stuff. My little microphone is having a mind of its own. All right. Stop it. Be a good microphone. All right. I'm going to fight with this thing. All right. Anyway. Nah, don't do that. All right. Stop it. All right. So anyway, so they were his people, then they became not his people. And when you're not God's people and you just become part of the nations, another term for that is Gentiles. All right. So that's important. And it's going to it should come to pass in the place where it said to them, you're not my people, they should be called sons of the living God. Isaiah also cries out concerning Israel. So Paul is giving yet another witness of what he is saying. Though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, the remnant will be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because the Lord will make short work upon the earth. And as Isaiah said before, unless the Lord of Sabaoth, or Adonai Tzvaot, had left us a seed, we would have become like Sodom, and we would have been like Gomorrah. What shall we say then? That Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness of faith, but Israel, pursuing the law of righteousness, has not attained to the law of righteousness. Why? Because they did not seek it by faith, but as it were by the works of the law, for they stumbled at that stumbling stone. As it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and rock of offense, and whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. All right, there is a lot going on in here. And it's a challenging passage. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a challenging passage, okay? So now you have Gentiles who were not God's people, but now people who are Gentiles coming in are now becoming and being restored as part of the house of Israel. But now he says Israel. All right, so the challenge here is to understand which one is he talking about. Is he talking about the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, or is he talking about all Israel, which would include the Jewish people, right? And yeah, that's part of this. Now, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and a rock of offense. Now, where does he talk about that? Well, Isaiah 28:16, which is interesting. So let's go there. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord, you scornful men who rule this people who were in Jerusalem. All right. Because you said we made a covenant with death and with Sheol. We are in agreement. Therefore, thus says the Lord, I will lay in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. Whoever believes will not act hastily. So Paul is bringing the tribe of Judah, the nation of Judah, very much into this conversation. He's not only talking about those who were not his people, namely the house of Israel, but he's including also the house of Judah. And he's saying how they're both going to come in, and it's going to be through the Lord Jesus. All right. So part of the challenge here is to understand and to give Paul a little bit of leeway here, because sometimes he's not 100% clear. I wish he were a little more clear about, exactly who he's talking about. But if we look through scripture, we find that we have the house of Israel, and then sometimes it's just all Israel. So that's what I suggested. He's making reference here to all Israel, or in this specifically, this case, he's talking about the Jews as well as part of this thing. So good question. That is definitely a challenging one. And then Romans 10:4, I think that one should be a lot simpler. All right, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes, right? So Christ is the end of the law. Now, this is again a passage where people love to say, see, you don't have to keep the law. It's all done. Jesus came and did it all. No, the word there is telos, and it means the goal, right? So why does a medical student go to medical school? What's the goal? To become a doctor. Do they forget everything once they get out of medical school? No, hopefully they use it. Like, that's the whole point, is to use their knowledge. Anybody who's going to study engineering, what's the goal of it? To become an engineer, to learn what you need to learn. So the goal for Christ is the goal of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Christ is the goal, right? So I'm keeping the law because I want to know Christ. I'm not trying to earn my salvation. I really am not. People have accused me of that. And I'll tell you what, I am in love with God's grace. I am banking on God's grace. If God is not gracious, I am toast. All right. I just want to make that really clear. So I'm very much banking on that. But I also want to live righteously because he's called me to live righteously. I have to live righteously because Christ is my example, right? Christ is the goal. How do I, that's it. Christ is the goal, not the termination thereof, but the end goal, the result thereof. Okay. All right. Very good. Let's go to another question. This is from Sean. Many who believe in a pre-trib rapture use the doctrine of imminency to support their view. I do not believe in a pre-trib rapture. I believe in a post-trib rapture at his second coming. Are there any scriptures to support the doctrine of imminency? I don't think there are any passages that really speak of imminency. They've kind of concocted this make-believe world of imminency and the pre-trib rapture doctrine. When you ask them, well, show me some passages, they're like, well, it's all shadows and types. And I've shown this many times. If you want, you can go and check out my teaching, Reclaiming the Rapture, here on YouTube, or you can get the book. But I show you in Reclaiming the Rapture all the passages that support, like very plain as day, support the gathering and how the gathering is going to happen at the time of the second coming, not magically, secretly 7 years before. And I show also Tim LaHaye, Hal Lindsey. These are two of the biggest names in the pre-trib rapture camp who very much and clearly say that there are no passages to support a pre-trib rapture. Okay, so if there's no passage to support a pre-trib rapture, then you don't have anything. Also, the idea that it was just absolutely imminent from the time that Jesus ascended doesn't make sense, because Jesus also said to Peter something regarding his death, right? That he would die in a certain way, right? They're going to take you. Don't worry about John, but they're going to take you and they're going to do stuff you're not going to like. So his return could not have been imminent before that, right? It just doesn't work. And you have to have Jerusalem surrounded. You got to have all these particular signs that are happening in Matthew 24. You have to have the abomination of desolation. We know that the falling away, the apostasia, which I won't get into that right now, will not happen until the man of sin, the son of perdition, is revealed, right? So Jesus gave us a very clear sign of what had to happen. And until that happens, you have no such thing as imminency. And as far as it being the day that no one knows the day or the hour, once you start studying the feast, you begin to realize, oh, that is referring to the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah. So it all comes into much better perspective once we really get our heads around this. All right. Thank you for that. This is from Nathan. In Isaiah 7:14 is the proper translation of the verse virgin or young woman. Well, it would be young woman. All right. So let's take a look at that. Isaiah 7:14. Let me put it in here. And let me get this. Okay. So Isaiah 7:14, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. All right. And so here the word is alma. Why does it do that? It's annoying. Hold on. We'll get back there. So the word here is alma, ha'alma. Okay, hine ha'alma. So this is a young woman, but this is a young unmarried woman. So in the context of their days, sadly not ours, but in the context of their days, a young woman who's not married should by default be a virgin, right? Now, there is another word, betula, which is someone who just clearly has not had any kind of relations. But so this is a more general word, but what we see in the Greek is the word parthenos, which is referring to a virgin. So, and that was something that was translated by the Alexandrian Jews. And so they certainly thought it was talking about a virgin. Okay, let's go to another question. This is from let's see. This is from Virginia. What do you think of Dr. Ken Johnson's dating of where we are in terms of history? I've read his Dead Sea Scroll calendar from the Essenes and have read his books. He believes we are now in the year 5948 Anno Mundi, the year of the world. We would be only 52 years away from 6,000 years, finishing the 6 days so close. Virginia, I've not read his book on that, so I cannot comment. That's interesting. I'm sure he does a powerful job of arguing for his opinion, and I can't say anything to the contrary. So I'm not necessarily endorsing him, but I'm not challenging it either. So that's where I am. Okay, this is from Sean. Where are the chambers in Isaiah 26:20? What will we hide in? Also, is this where we go after we are caught up in to meet the Lord in the air while the bowls of wrath are being poured out? Well, we just don't know in Isaiah 26:20 where the chambers are, where he says, come, my people, hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment. In your chambers, hide yourself until the indignation is past. I don't know where those chambers are. Are those chambers somewhere on earth? Does he stick us in Petra? Is this going to be some other dimensional safe place? I don't know. But wherever it is, it'll be safe. That's all I can tell you. So I've not seen anything in scripture that would give us a clue, a real solid clue as to where exactly that would be. So that's that's my opinion. All right. This is from Diana. Is it true that Potiphar was castrated? If so, why would he have married, and not to excuse the disgusting behavior of his wife toward Joseph, but one can only assume that she was probably not able to be physically tended to, so maybe that's why. Well, the word saris, yes, it could mean a eunuch, but it also could mean a captain. So that's the challenge. We don't know which one exactly it is. And of course, you can get these different opinions depending on how you want to interpret that word. So saris, again, can mean a eunuch, but it can also very much mean a captain, depending on context. And it's just hard to say which one it was. But if he was indeed a eunuch, that would explain a lot of things as to why she was not being faithful regarding her husband. So that's all I got. Okay. All right. So Diana says, can you help us understand angels? Ophanaim, cherubim, seraphim, watchers, archangels, messengers, angels like Gabriel, as the very word angel means messenger, guardian angels, warrior angels, as Michael seems to be watchers like the fallen ones. Hillel was a covering cherub, which seems to be a job title, but was also probably a seraphim. Ezekiel's wheels were Ophanaim. How do we distinguish angels by kind, order, rank, or species? All right, so I would suggest that cherubim and seraphim are exactly the same thing. Seraphim, which is the word there, just means fiery ones. If you look in the description in Ezekiel chapter 1, it says that they were fiery, right? So that's what they were. They were very fiery. And then the further description describes them as being wheels. So ophanaim, it just means two wheels, right? So these particular seraphim or cherubim, they're definitely called cherubim. They are described as being wheels. Okay, so I don't think Ophanaim is a particular type of angel, although, you know. Um, and of course, the word angel is a very broad term meaning messenger, as you point out there. But I think, what we're talking about are some of their job descriptions. A watcher, or being a watcher, was a job title of these particular angels. Now, I don't think that all angels were necessarily cherubim or seraphim, and again, I think those are exactly the same thing. So there were some different. There was a hierarchy within this, and of course, we know this because an archangel is an angel who is at the top, right? Arch is being the highest, so he's got the top job, and we only have the names of two angels, Michael and Gabriel. That's it. All of the others, and we assume there to be, millions upon millions of them. We don't know how many, but there's a whole bunch. But we're only given the names of two. As for Hillel, I'm not sure where Hillel's coming from. Oh, Halel. Okay, Halel. Okay, I got it. Halel, yes. Well, that is, of course, Satan in Isaiah 14:12. So I don't know if you've read my book, Diana, Corrupting the Image, Volume 2, but I go into lots of detail about him, about Halel, who was Enlil. Okay. So yeah, he was a covering cherub, and he was also a seraphim, right? Seraphim, cherub, same thing, in my opinion. So I hope that gives you a little bit of clarity. I know there's a lot of names out there, but we have to just understand that a lot of them mean exactly the same thing, and some are just job titles of those particular ones. And we have some that just say holy, holy, holy. Like that's their job. That's what they do, and they don't seem to do anything else. So, but I don't know that we have any more information within the Bible as to what they're doing necessarily. Um, okay, let's see here. This is from Bobby. In your last Bible Questions Answered episode, there was a question about God the Father and Jesus both occupying the throne. Your answer confused me. Can you break down the Trinity and the triunity of the Godhead for me? I struggle separating the Godhead. If God is outside space and time, couldn't he also occupy the same space or be in multiple places at once? Well, certainly God can do all kinds of stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense to us, right? So, that's the good news. Now, I've got a PowerPoint. I want to share this with you because there's really just far too much for me to go into all the detail here. So I think you would really do better with checking out this: the Trinity of God, biblical and Jewish or pagan. So I look at the Trinity's origins, which are rooted in biblical and Jewish thought and are not a product of pagan or Christian influence. So that teaching is on YouTube. I encourage you to check it out because, like I said, I go into a lot of detail about this very question. All right. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Okay. So I think that would really do you much better than me trying to sort of hash out some of those points yet once again here on this show. All right. Thank you, Bobby. This is from Ken. I was wondering if you've heard of any of Lee Brainard at Southkeep. He has many teachings about the pre-trib and the 1,000-year reign of Jesus. I'm myself in post-trib in my beliefs. Ken, I've not heard of Lee, so I'm not able to comment, but thank you for bringing him to my attention. Justin says, could you please expound on the greater context in Exodus 4:24? And it came to pass by the way at the inn that the Lord met him and sought to kill him, and explain who wanted to kill who and why. All right, so yeah, let's take a look at that passage. That's a fun passage. Exodus 4:24. All right. Yeah, what was God doing? God was going to kill God is going to kill him. He's going to kill Moses. What in the world? So it is one of these kind of odd things, right? But um, there you go. All right, it came to pass on the way at the encampment that the Lord met him to kill him and sought to kill him. The Lord met Moses and sought to kill Moses. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me." So he let him go. Then she said, "You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision." All right, so the him certainly is qualified because his wife keeps screaming at him, at Moses. We can only fill in the blanks from we can kind of deduce here what's going on. His wife is very unhappy about this. She seems to be um well, yeah, she's really upset that she has to circumcise her son, who is not a baby, by the way. But you have Moses, who goes and marries this Midianite woman. He is part of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then the 12 tribes, of course, right? So they are part of an Abrahamic covenant that requires circumcision. Apparently, they just never got around to this, and probably just judging from the comments here, it sounds like this came up sometime in their past. Hey, I really should circumcise him. You're not going to circumcise my son. That's the impression I get. I get him, that she's like, no, over my dead body, we're not going to circumcise him. Are you kidding? No way. All right. And so Moses, whatever, meek as Moses, who knows? I don't know if he didn't stand up for himself or he just let it slide, thinking, well, okay. And now he's going to go into the service of the Lord specifically, and he's going to lead the children of Israel out. If anybody needs to kind of play it by the book, it's Moses. So God is, well, he didn't kill him, right? So if he'd wanted to kill him, he would have, but he didn't want to, right? God isn't wanting to kill Moses, but this now becomes a thing where you can't go any further, Moses, until you do the right thing here. And if not, then I guess I can't use you, right? And so this is when this all comes into play. So, yeah, God holds his people responsible. Well, whether you like that or not, he does it. Okay. All right. This is from Eka Legacy. What are your thoughts about Neuralink and the guy behind it? It seems their goal is to upload human consciousness to a computer with crypto and NTFs or NFTs and virtual worlds on the blockchain. It seems like the world is moving in that direction. Well, I think it's always difficult to know exactly where these things are going. I think right now what they're talking about is putting the Neuralink in your brain, and then you will be able to use your brain thoughts, right, to then control things in the real world. And that has a lot of wonderful applications. So for people that are paralyzed, quadriplegics, paraplegics, people that have all kinds of just trouble with their motor sensory, system, this is going to save and solve a lot of problems. If I want to just, assuming I were to do that, if I want to use my mind or my thoughts to turn on my dishwasher or turn on my coffee maker or something like that. You can see how there could be so many great options. And I think that's what people are talking about. But of course, anything that can be used for good can also be used for bad. Right. So I don't necessarily, I don't know. I don't know if Elon Musk wants to use this for some nefarious purpose. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I'd love to give him the benefit of the doubt, but then again, maybe he does, or maybe somebody who's coming behind him will use it in a very nefarious way. So again, I think all of these technologies have the potential to be used for evil, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily will be used for evil. So I think that's where we have to be patient, and we got to, not jump to the conclusions, because we really have to be careful in how we're looking at these things. Okay. Legacy asks, is it wrong to bow to your karate instructor or peers at karate class? My understanding of bowing as a sign of respect or showing your peaceful intentions, similar to handshake. Do I understand this correctly? I think you're absolutely correct. Absolutely. I do Krav Maga, and we bow just as a sign of respect. We're not giving homage to the ancestors or anything like that. It's just a sign of respect. And this is like a handshake, or you might, nod your head when you meet somebody. Yeah, I think these are all the kind of things. And if you've ever fought somebody, you're trying to say, look, I'm not trying to kill you. You're not trying to kill me. We're sparring right now. Right. So that's another reason that you bow is like, hey, we're just having some fun here. Okay. We're not trying to do anything stupid. Okay. All right. So this is one from Virginia. A Messianic leader has given me an answer to a Sabbath question that was in my heart. I respectfully am not sure if it's correct. I'm a Gentile, and my reading of Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council, I read that I am under the Noahide laws. However, I assume that I am to want to and to willing to obey the Ten Commandments. However, the Messianic leaders seem to give me a pass on the Sabbath being Saturday. That is, worshiping on Sunday and being evangelical is equally obedient to God. Do you think so? My life is a bit complicated since I am a young 70, a long-time wife of an elder in a wonderful evangelical church, and am very involved in children's ministries. Okay, so Virginia, here's what I would suggest. It's not that you get a pass. The question is, did God ever change Saturday to Sunday? The answer, no, he did not. All right. Now, that in itself is a great answer. Now, the question I think that you're kind of asking is it wrong or are you allowed to worship Jesus on Sunday? And there's nothing wrong with worshiping Jesus on Sunday. And yes, you are very much allowed to worship Jesus on Sunday. So, when I go to some Sunday churches and I don't cast stones at them. The only time I would maybe challenge them is if they start saying, well, the Sabbath was changed to Sunday. I'd say, well, that's just not true. Like, I don't mind if you worship Jesus on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. But let's just be honest that the seventh day, the Sabbath, was not changed to Sunday, right? But if you want to celebrate God and you want to preach the good news in a building called church on Sundays, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot of good for it, a lot of good about it. All right. Now, I think there is a blessing, a huge blessing on keeping the Sabbath. And that is one reason that I have a Messianic community, because I want to put all of that, coming together to worship God and to celebrate the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath. I want to do it on the Sabbath, right? And so that is why I do that. But I, sometimes I frequent churches on Sundays, just to kind of keep a pulse on what's going out there. Maybe sometimes I need a uplifting message, and I'm glad that they're there. So I think God can use a lot of different people. Now, the latter part of your question here is, let's see. I've come to believe that Saturday Sabbath has not been changed. Okay, the biblical feast should have never been changed, etc. So, again, I would suggest that, do the things to the very best of your ability. Obviously, our society as a whole does not keep those things. And if you're able to start them and to do them, maybe you do them all quietly by yourself. That's fine. You don't have to convert everybody into this. If you can do it by yourself and you find joy in that, great. Then that is really sufficient. All right. 2 more questions from the app, and then I'll get into the live stream. This is from Dean. I am getting into the works of getting a Passover meal planned out for hopefully around 20 people. What are some foods that would be good to incorporate in the meal? This is our first year doing something like this. Well, really the only things that you're required are matzah and bitter herbs, right? Those are the 2 things that you're required to do. Everything else is rather subjective. It's up to you. So, I would go on Google and just look for Passover foods, traditional Passover foods. I love the charoset. That's where you take apples and goodness, I forget what else you put in it. I don't make it personally. Okay, so other people make it and they do a great job, and I'm so glad that they do because it's delicious. And anyway, so charoset, it kind of reminds you of the mortar that that the Israelite people were using to build Pharaoh's stuff. Let's see, you have matzo ball soup. That's a popular one. You can get either lamb or chicken or beef, right? So you have options. Now, some people say, oh, no, you have to do lamb. Others say, no, you should never do lamb. That's a traditional thing. So you're going to find You're like, oh no, what do I do? Well, you just pick one. You got freedom. You don't have to do either. So really just enjoy the time. All right. And Sean asks, in Revelation, there seems to be a distinction between the last three trumpets from the first four. I, like you, read the book of Revelation from a thematic approach. Do you think the last three trumpets coincide with the bowls? There seems to be some similarities between the events of the last three trumpets with some of the bowl judgments. So, yeah, so let's take a look there at the last three trumpets. Okay, so Revelation chapter 8. All right, Revelation chapter 8. There we go. And let me share my screen. Cool. All right, so we got the first angel, then we got the third angel. A great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. Then we got the fourth angel. A third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, a third of the stars. So a third of them were darkened. Now, what I believe is that the star that has fallen from heaven is responsible for the darkening of the sky. Why do I think that? Well, he opened the bottomless pit and smoke arose out of the pit of the smoke like a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. They're exactly the same thing, even though this is the fifth angel. So again, rather than reading these chronologically, which I know you're not doing, but again, just to kind of plug the whole thematic approach, instead of us saying that these are chronological events, let's say these are thematic things that are happening. And so when these trumpets are blown, it's like, oh, hey, take a look at this thing. This is a big theme that's happening. All right. So in the fourth, we know that a third of the sun was darkened. Why was it darkened? Because of the fifth trumpet, where the star that has fallen from heaven. And where do we see that star fallen? In the trumpets, the previous trumpets, right? We just saw that in the third trumpet, right? A great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and a third of the water. Okay, so his falling is a trumpet, and then it's the star that had fallen. There you have it in Revelation 9, right? So, let me just double back here to your question. So, do you think the last three trumpets coincide with the bowls? Yes, I do. I very much do. Okay, and certainly I was trying to get there. Okay, so now you got the sixth angel, right? So now you have the release the four angels who were bound at the river Euphrates. Let's just take a peek here. Then the sixth angel, right? Sixth trumpet, sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. They're both talking about the Euphrates, and they're both the sixth, and the water was dried up. So I think they're absolutely the same thing. And then by the time we get to the seventh, it's over, right? That's it. That is the end of the story, or we're getting to the very, 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 very climactic point of the story where Jesus is coming back, and we see the judgments as a result of that. Okay, let me get to the questions in the chat. All right. This is from Red. What's a good method for those of us who cannot afford formal training to learn to read the biblical languages? Well, so there's a lot of good stuff on online. There are free programs. I would actually recommend Duolingo. That's one that I've used. I think it's really great. You'll learn modern Hebrew. But in learning modern Hebrew, you're going to learn a lot of biblical Hebrew, right? So start there. Get to the point where you can actually say some things and you understand some things in modern Hebrew, and then go back to biblical Hebrew, and you'll be like, oh, wow, I already understand a lot of this. All right. And then there are just things online that will give you a kind of a guided tour about understanding the nekudot, which are the vowels, understanding the basics of grammar. So you can get it all for free. You know what these books and stuff do is just put it all together in a nice package for you, so you don't have to go and look for all the different resources. But now with the internet, it's all there available for free. So very cool. All right. Thanks for the compliments, guys. I see those. Thank you. Appreciate those. Ferdinand, we're glad that you joined us. It's really cool. All right. Let's see. Here's a question from David. How many heavens are there? Many cultures say heaven. I find only 3, as Paul mentions. Absalom caught between heaven and earth, where the birds fly. The expanse is Hashemayim, always plural. So I would agree that in the biblical context, there are only 3. There are 3 different heavens. So, you know, where the birds fly and where Absalom was caught were exactly the same place. Okay, so those were the same place. And then you have the expanse, which is what we call outer space, and that's what Hashemayim is. And then there's another heavens, and that's a different dimension, and that is where God and the angels and even the fallen angels reside. Okay, so that's the other heaven. All right, so those are the 3. So just the space around us, it keeps going into outer space, right? That would be the localized space, and then you have the outer space, which of course there's no air there, and then we have the place where God and the other entities are, right? So very cool. Let's see here, little comments going on, which is cool, and fantastic. Oh, and I got through all the questions. Awesome, guys. Well, I am so glad that I was able to do that. But for those of you that just joined me, glad you're here. Please put a question in next time or get the app. I think you'll find that really helpful. You can put it in. You don't have to be here necessarily live if you don't want to be here live. You can get your question answered that way. So thank you. Again, big shout out to my patrons. You can go to patreon.com/Doug Hamp if you want to be part of that. So thank you. Also encourage you to join us or think about saving your shekels to go with us to April, with us to Israel in April. There we go, of 2024. So it's April 7th through the 18th, 2024. Go to thewaycongregation.com for more information about that. So that's it for now.